morning to our viewers in Nigeria and across Africa. It's the conversation on TOS television network. And guess what? It's a wrap for the month of June 2021. We're officially, entering into the other half of 2021. I mean, I know Saga did give you lots of motivation yesterday, so I hope you still remember all of them. Well, my name is Adesu Alsui.
And I am Sagir Ibrahim. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Good morning, Adesu.
Good morning, Saga. I like you all, all black.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Everything out there.
I mean, we try.
Yeah, of course.
You're looking good yourself.
Thank you very much. Did you sleep well?
Yeah, I did.
I always have to ask you if you sleep because I think you're the one person that
I
really doesn't actually have a night.
I did, Sha. I did. Let's just leave it at that because if I start talking about it.
All right. I think everyone can see why I always ask him if he did sleep well because, I mean, his night is always, back and forth. But okay. All right. With that, we're going to bring you the quote of the day. And afterwards, we'll be bringing you up to speed with stories, happenings, and developments from across the African continent.
Always remember,
this man I have creative design. We really like it, but
you deserve a break. You can indulge in a cup of 3-in-1 Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Indulge. Now available in the 450 grams pouch.
All right, moving straight into stories, from across the African continent, starting with Tanzania, where, Tanzania is looking to support affected economies by pandemic with $470 million. Now, President Samia Suluhu Hassan has announced that Tanzania will spend $470 million buying vaccines and supporting economic sectors affected by the coronavirus. Half of the cash, the president says, will be spent on vaccines, protective gear, and other medical equipment, with the rest going to stimulate sectors that are reeling from the crisis. The government is working with healthcare partners to develop a plan to distribute vaccines so any Tanzanian who wants to be inoculated will be able to do so, she said.
Yeah, I think it's a good one coming from the Tanzanian president. It's quite important to spend money on getting vaccine, but while doing so, do as much as you can to make sure the health sector is in the right shape in order to cater for all of the infections as well as other health crises.
But I would think all of this would have been put in place, when we had the first bout of coronavirus pandemic across Africa. For me, it's having to now see that even when we're still talking about a third wave, after 1 year, we're still seeing countries saying we have to put things in place, measures in place, to help the health sector. And I'm like, so what were we doing the whole 1 year when we were first hit by the pandemic?
Well, even the countries with the best in terms of healthcare facilities in Africa still have to keep ensuring that it's up to date, it's up to speed, because resources deplete. So as long as the healthcare system is receiving this much influx of people, who are infected and possibly even are carrying other infections, and need to be treated for other things, there's maternity healthcare and the likes of that, you need to keep putting in more, and you need to keep putting in much more money into the system to ensure that it's working at an optimal level. So despite the fact that they might be saying we need to do more to make sure, it doesn't necessarily mean the healthcare system is in bad shape per se. It just means that, look, our resources are being depleted and we need to spend more to ensure that it's working optimally.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Now we go to Sudan now, where a quarter of a century after the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank launched their highly indebted poor countries (HIPC) debt relief program, Sudan can begin to receive relief on its more than $50 billion debt. Over the past years, Sudan has pushed through several major economic reforms, including the removal of fuel subsidies and sharp exchange rate devaluation under an IMF monitored program required for debt relief. According to an IMF official last month, Sudan is the penultimate economy to come through the process and by far the largest case in absolute terms.
That's quite something. And
I feel it's quite something to see nations heavily indebted. And having to rely on this debt relief. Don't get me wrong, it's a good thing, but however, when
But
they
it's a
get this
good
debt
thing
relief,
that they got to the point where they can pay back the debt, or it's a good thing that they got to borrow money. Which one
I
is the
need you
good
to
thing?
understand that they didn't get to a point where they could pay back. They got to a point where they couldn't pay
That's
back
what I'm
because
saying.
they were
You say
highly
it's a good thing.
indebted.
That's what I'm saying. Is it a good thing
And
that they
then-
got to a point where they cannot, they borrowed so much
Okay,
they
now
can't
it's a
pay
double-edged
back?
sword, really, because it's fortunate and however unfortunate. Because it's unfortunate because you know you're so highly indebted. That's unfortunate. That you had to be granted a debt relief. That is fortunate. However, being granted a debt relief is not enough to stop the country from borrowing, because the country is still going to borrow.
Exactly. It is one of our guests, on the show always says it's not a bad thing to borrow, but when you borrow, what do you do with the money? And then what do you
with the
put in
money?
place to ensure that you can actually, pay back the
Exactly.
money? So you're saying once you borrow these monies to do this for the economy, but then you borrow and then you don't use it, so you don't get returns, and then you get to a point where you have to now, rely on debt relief and all of that.
I believe until leaders get a perfect understanding of this theory you just mentioned now, a lot of countries are going to be highly indebted, not because they couldn't do anything with it, but because their leaders are just plain reckless.
I think probably if it was left to me, maybe everyone should be left to, generate their own revenues to run their countries, and then people don't have to borrow.
Well done, Madam President.
All right, away from that. So according to a report by United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, foreign direct investment into Africa were down at $7 billion in 2020, largely due to the COVID-19 pandemic. As at the end of 2019, the foreign direct investment were at $47 billion compared to $40 billion at the end of 2020. Commodity-dependent economies like Eritrea, Burundi, and Tanzania were severely affected compared to non-commodity dependent nations like Kenya, Uganda, and Ethiopia, according to the UNCTAD report. I'm wondering where Nigeria falls into all of this. Are we commodity dependent or not?
I would say we might be.
I think we are.
Okay.
I think Nigeria is largely dependent on commodities. We largely don't produce a lot here.
I say we might be. The essence is because most of what we import, I believe the president has placed a ban on, foodstuff.
Just foodstuff.
No, not just foodstuff as well as other luxury products. But meanwhile, this figure here, $47 billion in terms of foreign direct investment, as a matter of fact, I think Nigeria, I hope I'm getting this right. I think Nigeria accounts for close to 40% of the total figure here. It used to be around 25 billion for Nigeria alone. I hope I'm getting my facts straight and I'm not mistaking it for something else. But however, you need to understand that, the COVID-19 pandemic hit globally. It ravaged economies.
I know.
So it is not unexpected for us to see a fall, in the foreign direct investments. However, I must say Africa is having it really good as a continent, because I know in Southern America right now, the case is really different.
They are one of the worst hits in
Talk about Argentina,
exactly.
Talk about Brazil, Venezuela, and a host of other countries. There, it's really
it was
not
really
funny.
terrible.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was watching a documentary yesterday about how the Venezuelan economy got hit by the pandemic. Now, as it is, of course, economic sanctions and other sanctions came to play as well. But however, the economy is so bad that inflation has risen 13,000%. To the extent that money is bought not for its worth. Because if you want to hold money that will last you an entire day, you probably will be carrying a bag of money around. A very big bag. Yes, inflation hit 13,000%. So as a matter of fact, Africa is really having it good.
We're having it good, but I think we're still using the pandemic as an excuse to say, our economy was hit. We had the we had that.
That's the problem of leadership. Anyways.
Exactly. Go on.
Okay, so in moving forward, moving on to terrorism now. In a global alliance against terrorism, Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio has proposed the establishment of an Africa task force to identify and stop the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, ISIL-related terrorist threats on the continent. ISIL affiliates have claimed gains in recent weeks in Nigeria, the Sahel, Mozambique, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. Di Maio, standing alongside Blinken, told reporters that with the support of the USA and many other partners, he proposes the establishment of an Africa task force to identify, stop ISIS-related terrorist threats on the continent. I think this is a good one.
Yes, I do agree.
But the problem still remains. A lot of issues have emanated as a result of the Boko Haram crisis over the years, and foreign organizations, foreign partners, and the international community who have tried, to support Nigeria in terms of intelligence, military support, and the likes. A lot of them has complained that, look, there's a probability that the government might be complicit.
Yeah, that has been.
So this is the only problem I have, with setting up of this task force.
Yes, but the task force is not a Nigerian task force. It's like a compilation, like African task force. So you have different countries in Africa having to form a joint task force to tackle the insurgency on the continent, not necessarily just in the country. So say Nigeria, maybe the government is like you said, complicit and all of that. So then we might begin to see the loophole in why is it working in other countries, and then we're having to see this in Nigeria at this point.
While I understand this 100%, I still need to quickly add and remind you that what is applicable here in Nigeria, a lot of what is applicable here in Nigeria is applicable in the rest of Africa.
Yes.
Corruption,
yes,
is one of it.
Yeah, but then again, insurgents, because we're not looking at I don't like to call it homegrown insurgents because Boko Haram is to Nigeria. But we're looking at ISIL. We're looking at these are. They have international affiliates and all
I
of
hope
that
you know
stuff.
ISWAP is related to, is affiliated, I beg your pardon, to ISIL.
Yeah, well, okay. So we're just going to see how all of this plays out.
Well, I think we should just watch to see how
all right, that's it for, this segment on the conversation. We are going to bring you COVID-19 updates from across Africa right now. And afterwards, we'll be bringing, front pages of Nigerian dailies this morning.
TOS TV Network mobile app is now available. You can now catch up on our breaking news, stream our programs live, watch out for the latest update on sports and politics as they unfold. You can also get notifications for our upcoming programs and events. All these on our TOS TV Network mobile app, available on Apple Store and Google Play Store. TOS TV News from Africa by Africans.
Being a journalist means in-depth analysis that unravels hidden truths, that question the status quo and fact-checks government.
These criminal elements hiding under the cloak of surveillance contractors are the APC elements.
Do you have facts to prove that? Being a journalist means waking up every day with a burning desire for peace, equity, and justice for all citizens.
We're being told that the choice you have is to take the lesser of two evils.
It means patriotism via the prism of objectivity and accountability. It means giving my platform to the masses to discuss issues that matter to them.
Some of them, if they bring budget, and the budget they lose. Some of them sleep. They're going to ask how much you are on. I have it.
Thereby shaping government policies and laws. My name is Osasu Igbenegbu, and I am the People's Journalist.
It is still the conversation on your digital first Pan-African News Network, TOS Television. And like I always say, you could be part of the conversation on our community on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by connecting with us with the details currently shown on your screen. Yes, it is the newspaper segment of the conversation this morning, and we will be starting with the Nigerian Tribune newspaper, and from the very top, with the very first headline there, send bill on restructuring to NAS, Afenifere tells Buhari. Right beside that, we see Ogun will commence flooding between July and September. Government alerts residents. And beside that, we see Makinde sacks chief of staff, 17 commissioners. And for the gaping headline there, Ohaneze, ACF, Afenifere, groups react as FG arrests rearrange Kanu. We have two riders underneath that headline. How he was arrested, Malami. Why I ran away, Kanu. There are a couple of other headlines on the Nigerian Tribune newspaper of this morning. You could grab a copy to keep updated.
All right, looking at the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, the very gaping headline, that's the banner headline on the Vanguard newspaper, says how federal government worked with Interpol to nab IPOB's Nnamdi Kanu. Quite a number of rider under that headline. Court remands him in DS's custody, fixes July 26 for accelerated trial. I fled Nigeria to save my life, Kanu tells court. Kanu wrongly tried and detained. A Gmako IPOB lawyer. Don't manhandle him, he's a freedom fighter, Kanu's brother tells FG. His arrest, not the end of IPOB, as coming from IPOB. Ndigbo will react if anything untoward happens to him. Bazulike Amechi is the one saying that. CNG insists on referendum, says Kanu's arrest, not end of Biafra's struggle. And the last one, controversies over where Kanu was arrested. Quite a number of headlines on the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Just get yourself a copy so you can read up on, all of that.
For the Daily Trust newspaper of this morning, we start from the very top, where Afenifere to Buhari initiates transmit restructuring bill to NAS. Beside that, we see no petrol price increase in July, and that's by NNPC. And right beside that, we see Yarima Yari Matawale reunite in APC. For the banner headline on the Daily Trust newspaper, how FG used Interpol to extradite Kanu. We have a couple of riders under that headline. Why I jumped bail. He'll face fresh charges, government. ACF Ohaneze worldwide welcomes rearrest. And for the last rider there, IPOB leader to remain in DSS custody till July 26th. And underneath the picture of the day, we'll see 2023 Igbo presidency will end Biafra agitation. And that's by Ekweremadu. There are a couple of other headlines plus other stories on the Daily Trust newspaper. You could grab a copy to keep updated. All
right, the last daily we're looking at this morning is the Nigerian News Direct. So the very gaping headline there, the banner headline says, why FG is acquiring 20% stake in Dangote refinery. That's coming from Kiari, and that's on page 2. Underneath the pictures of the day, how Nnamdi Kanu was arrested in Ethiopia, arraigned in Abuja. That's on page 2. Sanwo-Olu relaunches Jigi Bola Freeside program for 250,000 residents. That's on page 3. After 10 years of darkness, Ifetedu, others jubilate as Ayutollah flags off construction of 33 kV power supply line. That's on page 16. And that is it for the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Get yourself a copy so you can be fully abreast with everything that they're saying here on the paper this morning.
And as well, that is it for the newspaper segment of the conversation this morning. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we'll bring you the big story.
You won't go shake your body. Instead, they make it calm down. If the form say it's happy, you want to grow 6 packs in a day. I beg you not to pass your power. You want to show yourself, oh.
Whatever your size, find it with the new Airtel data plans. Dial *141# now to get the plan that suits you. Airtel, the smartphone.
At the first sign of pain, you need a solution that you can trust to provide effective relief and is gentle on the stomach. Try Panadol Caplets for relief from headaches, body aches, and fever. With Panadol's Optizorb formula, the tablet gently breaks down in the stomach, quickly absorbs, and starts providing pain relief in 15 minutes. For fast and effective pain relief that you can trust, try Panadol Caplets. This has been Medifact for Panadol.
This is The Conversation on your digital first Pan-African News Network, TOS Television. And like I always say, you can be part of the conversation by connecting with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram using the details currently showing on the screen. It is the big story segment of The Conversation, and today's focus is going to be on sexual and gender-based violence, with focus on the adoption of the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act as well as the Child Rights Act. And today we will be joined via phone by gender advocate Miss Buki Williams, who is also the Executive Director of Education as a Vaccine, as well as a member of the State of Emergency SGBV. Thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am. So, ma'am, what's your assessment of the passage of the VAPP as well as Child Rights Act in the various states?
So I will say that we have seen some improvement. That's the first thing I can say, because after last year, after the impact of COVID-19 on cases of sexual and gender-based violence, we knew that 1 in 3 women already, based on the data that we have, the national data that we have in the country, experience some form of gender-based violence, either sexual, emotional, or physical violence. So we already knew that there was already an epidemic of sexual and gender-based violence in Nigeria. But what the pandemic did was it amplified the situation and made it even worse for a lot of women and girls and children as well, especially those living with disability and those who are facing other forms of marginalization, for example. And so what we saw, there was a UN Women Nigeria report that was released, I think, in May 4th. That was about a couple of months after we've already gone through the lockdown. And what we saw was a 56% increase in the number of reported cases because a lot of people were locked in with their abusers. And so that's why we saw the movement for a state of emergency. And what we've seen since then is around that time, there was maybe only about 14 to 15 states who would pass the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, depending on who you ask, because some states will say they've passed it and we've yet to see a copy of it. But at least close to 21 that I can say that I've seen, actual evidence, and the governor's wife is released a communique saying 27 states had passed the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. We've actually seen more states pass it. With the Child Rights Act, we're still seeing very slow movement on that. 11 states still haven't passed it, even though it came out in 2003. But what I can say is that in terms of laws, we are seeing some movement. We saw recently that Edo State has made movements to actually look at the law again and make sure that it was fit for purpose. News just recently came out yesterday that the Lagos State government is also reviewing the domestic violence law, and we've seen some movement. So in terms of laws, I think we can say we're seeing a lot more movement than we had seen before the pandemic, because it became even clearer that this was an issue and it was something that it could not be avoided. But the truth of the matter is that we need every state to pass it. That's the only way we can have a nationally coordinated action. And because this law is so important, it is more comprehensive than any other law we have on sexual and gender-based violence in the country. It really provides a comprehensive definition for rape. It addresses all forms of violence, even though there's still, newer ones that are coming in terms of cyber violence and other issues. But for now, it's the most comprehensive one we have, and lays out how states can actually respond to violence and in what ways they can respond to violence and how they can provide support to survivors. So it's a really important piece of legislation, and we need every state to pass it. That's the only way we can say, okay, as a country, we're really ready to address sexual and gender-based violence.
Okay. You did give an update, about, government efforts, in tackling sexual and gender-based violence. You mentioned the Child Rights Act, the VAPP, this declaration of state of emergency and all of that stuff. But how far would you say we have leapt as a country, in having to win the war, a fight against, sexual and gender-based violence?
Well, from the government, after the state of emergency was declared, we did see some movement from them, like I mentioned, apart from us seeing more states passing the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act. We saw that, some of the governors' wives have also been doing a lot to push their husbands who are governors to do more in their states, right? But the truth of the matter is that we, as the State of Emergency GBV Coalition, we're also asking these same questions from you, that 1 year, which was in June, earlier this month, since the state of emergency was declared, we need to see more. And so we've actually sent out Freedom of Information Act letters to the police. We sent it to Ministry of Women Affairs. We sent it to Ministry of Justice. And we sent it to, to the Governors Forum as well, to be able to ask these questions, maybe to be like, can you tell us what you've accomplished, right? And we've also tried to look, in the news and also to see what is happening. We know that an interministerial committee was set up that is inclusive of the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of Women Affairs, who were supposed to meet together with the different national actors to be able to show us what exactly is the plan moving forward. From what I know they've had about 2 meetings so far, but we haven't heard much from them since then. Okay. And so we're really hoping that, some meetings have been taking place and they could show us a better coordinated strategy, because one of the most important things in addressing sexual and gender-based violence is having a coordinated strategy, right? To be able to ensure so that when somebody goes to the police to report a case, they are actually able to access information and actually able to access support instead of stigma and discrimination, for example. If they go to the hospital, they're not being sent back to go get a police report, but are being provided the services that they needed, get a medical report, and also be able to, be referred to other services as well. All that when, these cases are being prosecuted, that it's not up to the survivor and their families or the civil society organizations that are helping them to be able to remind, the prosecutor that the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act exists in the FCC if they want to use, the penal code instead. So the truth of the matter is that we're seeing increased awareness. We're seeing some increased movement, like, for example, sexual assault referral centers being developed across the country. There's now one in Buhari in FCC. We need more. That's the truth, but we'll give credit in terms of us seeing some level of movement. We've seen, some level of police training that has also been happening, but we need more. We need actual family support units that are responsive and that can take action and that are funded as well. Because, if you go to a unit and they don't have money for investigation, the money has to come out of pocket from either the survivor or either civil society organizations like us or Dorothy and Jimanzi Foundation, Santi and Drake, who are out there who are providing support and constantly fundraising to be able to provide services to survivors.
Okay, so far, you talked about prosecution and conviction. So I would like to ask, has there been any improvement, as a matter of fact, in the prosecution and conviction of sex offenders in Nigeria?
So the truth of the matter is that when it comes to prosecution and conviction, a lot of it really is pushed by either survivors' families or, by civil society organizations. So there's an amazing organization in Edo State called Braveheart, who have been doing a lot of amazing work, and they have been able to get convictions. And that's actually built on the fact that they have relationships with the police, they have strong relationships with the prosecutors, and have been able to really advance a really strong agenda in Edo State to be able to ensure that they're getting prosecutions. And that's true for many states across the country as well. It's in states where you see a level of coordination between civil society organizations, the police, and the justice system that we're able to see increased prosecutions. But the truth of it is that, the proof is in the pudding in the high-level cases that we've seen. Uwaila, who was really the impetus for the protests that led to the state of emergency, we still haven't heard much about her case. Unfortunately, Bakarat Bello in Oyo State as well, we haven't heard much about what is going on in terms of catching those who carried out this heinous crimes against them, and then to be able to actually see justice. I mean, one of the things we're now pushing for, because also the justice system was on strike, and, somebody made a really important, comment to us when we were talking about the justice system, is that the justice system doesn't work too much for the average Nigerian. So how do you think it's actually going to deal with a situation in which, most Nigerians feel that, gender-based violence is, is normalized, right? And they think, this is what happens in an issue. So you can imagine that the justice system is not going to move fast on on that. So one of the things we're pushing for, and we're seeing that Lagos State is making moves around this, is that maybe we should copy that across the country, special courts, right? Yes. Because even when the justice system wasn't working, mobile courts is still available to deal with traffic offenses and to do with other issues. And if we say that this is a state of emergency and that this is a shadow pandemic, then we should, address it and put in specialized courts so that even if the justice system is slow or, for example, is on strike, that cases in terms of sexual gender-based violence that cannot wait will continue to be addressed.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Buki, for joining us on the show this morning.
So
Unfortunately, we're out of time, so that's the much we can take.
All right. Thank you so much for having me again.
Thank you so much. We hope to have you some other time as well.
Yes. And thank you for joining us on the conversation this morning. Thank you for staying with us. As I always say, the conversation comes to you every weekday at the same time. That means we'll be back here tomorrow. But before then, you have to be a part of the TOS TV community. So follow TOS TV Network across all social media platforms. That's on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, at TOS TV Network. And of course, subscribe to TOS TV Network on YouTube. You should also stream our content on www.tostvnetwork.com. My name is Adesu Alsui.
And I am Sagir Ibrahim. Thank you so much for watching and see you tomorrow.